Hi, I'm Richard Friedman, and welcome to my video cartoon for June 27th, 2025. Here tonight, we have this cartoon here. This is the President Trump's conservative members of the Supreme Court here. And what I've done is basically, after today's ruling on the Supreme Court, I decided to enhance this cartoon that I had originally done to incorporate that event. So it's a lot to unpack, so let's have a go at it. So here's the Supreme Court. Now here is Justice Sotomayor, and this is going to come into play when I read you the introduction. I'm going to first show you the characters in the cartoon, read you the introduction, and then we take it from there. Now, here's the Supreme Court. Here is Justice Sotomayor here. And here is Justice Neil Gorsuch. And here is Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she read the decision today regarding birthright citizenship. And I'll give you a little insight into that right now. Is that basically it was a 6-3 ruling on. They didn't rule on birthright citizenship. They didn't address the constitutionality of ending birthright citizenship. What they discussed was basically the court's limit to issue broad injunctions. They came to the conclusion that courts do not have the right, the court's ability to issue broad injunctions, and that basically lays the groundwork for President Trump to go ahead with other things that might take away, that could very easily take away other rights. You see, the right to birthright citizenship is a right anybody born in the United States, which is put down in the Constitution. And it's there, but they're saying now is President Trump saying he's come up with a whole thing going back to the Civil War and things like that after the Civil War, and trying to reconstruct the meaning of the Constitution is what President Trump did today. I don't want to dwell into that aspect of it. What I'm saying to you is that what they did was lay the groundwork. It's something like the immunity decision, in a way, that the immunity decision gave the president immunity in all kinds of situations, that he could be immune from anything that remotely connects to his responsibility as president. He does. You know, someone even asked him if he decided to take out somebody, if that would be in the interest of the national security. It got to that point where that question was raised. So here, it's a similar. It's an analogy to this ruling. Is an analogy to the immunity decision, because it grants. It takes away. An injunction means they granted the limited powers of courts to have the right to issue injunctions on orders from President Trump, is what it comes down to. Injunction means to stop from doing something. So the court refused today to go either way, to stop them from doing something or not stop them from doing something, particularly here, specifically with birthright citizenship. What they did, again, is they questioned the right of any court, high court, to basically issue that injunction, to stop it. So it opens a floodgate here, and Sotomayor here, she wrote a dissenting opinion saying that this takes away many of our rights, and no right is safe. She said that no right is safe, and it's an attack on our system of law, because she said that because it's an attack on the system of checks and balances, because you're supposed to have a system with checks and balances where the judiciary we don't have a king, and and this moves us in that direction where we basically are moving towards an authoritarian king situation in a way. I'm not saying we're there, but it's a step, because the president could next day could say something else, and then the only person who has a right to file a complaint is an individual or a group or group action. So Amy this here Justice Amy Coney Barrett, what she said was basically she didn't even go near the constitutionality of birthright citizenship, of taking the unconstitutionality of taking away birthright citizenship. What she did was basically, she said, it's not there's no precedent in the founding fathers had no precedents for blanket injunctions. That was her basis for saying, okay, well, let everybody sue what they want and this and that, and then what happens? You have some states where somebody's born there, where they're citizens, some place where they're not, and then again, a young lady has a child out of wedlock, then you got to do a DNA test, and you got to go. Suppose she has triplets or something like that, and you got to do all kinds of DNA tests and everything like that, and it runs into a whole crazy it expands the federal government. They're trying to cut down on bureaucracy. It creates another bureaucracy, because you got to do all this investigating into the history of this child was born to an unwed woman. How do you know who's the father? So you got to do all kinds of tests and stuff like that. And then and Pam Bondi today, she couldn't answer those hypothetical questions. She said, "Well, first let's get the law that birthright citizenship is no more. And once we get that, then we could start working on the other aspect of it." That the questions that were raised here. So anyway, that's the point here. So what I'm bringing out in this cartoon. I want to go back to the introduction here. Richard Trump's Supreme Court fantasy amid his nomination of Emil Bove to a federal judgeship. This was the original cartoon that I had planned, but before the ruling. Okay, amid his nomination of Emil Bove to a federal judgeship on an appeals court. Given Bove was Trump's ex-defense lawyer, so he was his ex-defense lawyer, and refused to clearly say who won the 2020 election. I heard him myself. They asked him, who won the 2020 election? He said, well, President Biden became president. That's all he could say was President Biden became president as a result of the election. But he couldn't say who won the election, like it was, like a wedding, Did you marry this man? Yeah, I married this, or something like that, or a woman, or something like that. But was it a shotgun wedding? Well, I can't say whether it was a shotgun wedding or not. Something like that. It was just like there was no conclusion. He couldn't come forward and make an emphatic statement that the election was fair, or to say, "Oh, I think the election was unfair and it was crooked." The whole thing. He couldn't go either way. So what he tried to do here was to negotiate, like that, and say, "Well, President Biden became president as a result of the election." Anyway, so that's a side point here. So this man now, President Trump has nominated, and there's another thing here, as the whistleblower allegation that he told lawyers to say, quote, "F you" to court orders and ignore them. So this is Bove was a top official in the Justice Department. He still is, and now he's being promoted here to a federal judgeship on an appeals court that covers a few states there. And the thing about it is that, again, he's under an umbrella of scrutiny here because of all these. First of all, this was a whistleblower. You see, a whistleblower said he told lawyers to say "F you" to court orders and ignore them, and he denies basically that. He doesn't recall it. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't recall it saying "F you." He said here, or recalling anything like that. Here now, Trump, and it doesn't disqualify him. Anything that they said, he said, doesn't disqualify him from that position on the appeals court. And here now, Trump's fantasy of Emil Bove winning confirmation to the U.S. Supreme Court. So Trump, if Sotomayor, and Sotomayor is really has been blowing a gasket. I mean, all these things that she's becoming very upset about. So I said to myself, well, this would be Trump's fantasy to get her out, to have her retire, not to get her out, but to have her retire from the court, and then he could put in Emil Bove, because he's already had experience he's been in the Justice Department. Now he's had experience as an appeals court federal judge. So he's right. That's I suppose a lot of Supreme Court justices took this path of progression to arrive at being a Supreme Court justice. So President Trump will be able to say, well, he has experience. He was in the Justice Department, very successful there in getting rid of a lot of bad people. He was very successful as appeals court justice. And he now, I'm sure, will be very successful as a Supreme Court justice. So there you have it. So that's what I'm saying here. So that would be Trump's fantasy in this cartoon, okay? And the thing about it is Justice Sotomayor's future retirement from the court, given Sotomayor, joined by judges Jackson and Kagan, dissented. So those are 3 judges that dissented, and 6 others. These 6 judges here went ahead and basically they voted for that decision on basically limiting the rights of courts' ability to issue broad injunctions. So a broad injunction meaning to block a federal President Trump's order. That's a checks and balances here. That stops a president from becoming a king and ruling over the whole nation, saying this is this, this is that. And in the future now, it's going to be harder, much harder, for anybody to stop. Injunction means to stop from doing something. So it's going to be very hard to stop President Trump if people feel that he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing, taking away certain rights. So what's down the road, who knows? But that's what this lays the foundation for. And then they're going to say, well, in a few months we'll come back and then we'll decide whether this is basically unconstitutional. So I can't see why they couldn't decide it right then and there, and say this is the way it is, and we're not going to go into that other aspect of what on whether broad injunctions can be issued. So Amy Coney Barrett went historical, and she said the founding fathers never intended for there to be blanket universal, she called it, quote, universal injunctions, relief, only to those who brought lawsuits or a claim action. And during our nation's founding, she argued that there were no universal injunctions. So that's a historical thing there. She sounds a lot like here Clarence Thomas, who always goes historical. Okay, so here's President Trump's fantasy that we have here. Emil Bove now on the Supreme Court. You see, and here is Justice Sotomayor. She's taken off with her gavel. You see, and she's saying goodbye to the Supreme Court. She's had it there. You know, she with everything like that. There she is. Justice Sotomayor saying farewell, retiring, is President Trump's fantasy. And she's saying this: I am going back to the Bronx, that's where she's from, where I can better I can get better use out of this gavel if someone breaks into my car. So she's going back to the Bronx where she can get better use out of this gavel if someone breaks into a car in the Bronx, you know. I guess these things, I'm from the Bronx, so these things happen there, you know. Somebody breaks into your car, something like that, you know, or takes a few tires or something like that. And so anyway, so that's her farewell, and that would be President Trump's fantasy that of Sotomayor retiring and being replaced, him replacing it with Emil Bove as the Supreme Court justice here. Okay, so I introduce you to the justices. These are President Trump's conservative justices who go along with him, and they also went along with him on the immunity. Here is Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who went along with that on the immunity, and here's Justice Neil Gorsuch, And here is Chief Justice John Roberts, who read the immunity decision. He read the immunity decision. The Chief Justice read the immunity decision, giving President Trump another a free hand there, with the backing of the Supreme Court. And here is Justice Brett Kavanaugh. There he is. There's his smile. And we had, again, just Neil Gorsuch. And we have here Justice Samuel Alito, who likes to go fishing a lot on yachts with Justice Clarence Thomas. They're fishing partners. They like to go on fancy yachts fishing together, So, and then here's President Trump, thumbs up. Okay. Again, was Justice Samuel Alito, Justice Clarence Thomas. Okay, so we have the 6 justices, and there would be 7 if Sotomayor goes on. That goes away from her dissent. There's only 2 left, so that would leave Kagan and let's see, Kagan and Brown. That would leave Ketanji Brown, and Justice Kagan, the 2 Lone Rangers on the Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Brown, and there you have it on the Supreme Court. Okay, with Judge Kagan and Ketanji Brown, and bye-bye to Sonia Mayor. She's going back to the Bronx with her gavel, where she can better use it if someone breaks into her car. And there it is. There it is. There she is, waving goodbye. Bye. She's happy to get the hell out of here. Get out of the court. There's the court, and she's waving goodbye to everybody down there, saying, "Bye, folks. I'm out of here. Bye. I got my gavel, and that's what I'm going to use it for." Okay, now here we go to President Trump here, who in his fantasy he congratulates Emil Bove for winning confirmation to the Supreme Court, because the Republicans, let's say, they still have a majority there, which may not be, which may be a very long shot down the road now, but you never know what can happen. You never know, right? People said it was a long shot that President Trump would be re-elected president a long time. So who knows what can happen here in our great country. So here it is. So here's Emil Bove. President Trump, very proud that the Republicans voted him in there and got him confirmation there. And he's on the Supreme Court, standing next to Thomas and Trump. No, standing next to Trump and Thomas and Trump. Standing next to them, very proud justice there, Emil Bove. And Trump saying here in this fantasy, he's saying to him, here he goes, "Congratulations to our newest member of the United States Supreme Court, Justice Emil Bove, who moments ago was sworn in by Justice Clarence Thomas, whose allegiance to the law has earned him the respect of all Americans." Okay, so this is, so there it is. So he was sworn in by Clarence Thomas, who swore him in, who swore Bove in just moments ago in his fantasy. And there they are. And now you have a 7-2 Supreme Court. And that's basically the fantasy of President Trump. And again here, sort of Sotomayor leaving the court, going back to the Bronx with her gavel, where she could get better use out of it, because she's outnumbered, clearly being outnumbered every time. And this has been the pattern, 6-3. I mean, it's really been, especially with that immunity decision. So there you have it, folks. I'll just go over this again with you there. There they all are. Yeah, okay, there's Emil Bove, thumbs up, as the newest member of the United States Supreme Court, confirmed, sworn in by Justice Clarence Thomas. The Trump Dream Justice Emil Bove. I wrote that here. The Trump Dream Justice Emil Bove. Okay, there. I don't want anybody to accuse me of making up stories. This was a fantasy But what I told you before, what happened today with the Supreme Court is no fantasy. So there it is. That's it, folks. Thank you for watching my video cartoon. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.